morning and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Jim Vincent, and we have a very important show for you this week, and every week, actually. Last week we had direct action for rights and equality. We talked about rent stabilization. And this week we're going to stick with direct action for rights and equality. We're going to talk about what's going on at the ACI in terms of medical attention, which has been in the news over the last several weeks. And we have none other than the president of DARE, or Direct Action for Rights and Equality, Joe Benton, who is a good friend of mine, who I've known for quite a while. Fellow Virgo, I just learned that, just in the green room. And we have Leonard Jefferson, who has, done a lot of good work, over the last few years. He's going to get to some of that, but he's with Direct Action for Rights and Equality, or DARE, as well. And I've met him maybe a year ago or whatever. We talked about a lot of different things, and I'm glad to see that he's on with the president, Joe Benton, talking about the ACI. So let's start, Joe. I know you from being in the community. You're a big advocate, and respect that. But recently at the ACI, there's been some prisoners that have passed in terms of what the community says is medical neglect. Of course, the ACI is, they're going to challenge that. The community has asked for an investigation. Direct Action of Rights and Equality, or DARE, is leading that. I know Open Doors and Black Lives Matter, RIPAC, and about 5 other organizations have signed a letter to demand an investigation. Exactly. So let's start from the top, though. Is medical neglect a new phenomenon at the ACI?
It is. It's been that way for quite a while.
So it's not new?
No, it's not new at all.
Okay.
In fact, back in the 70s, 80s, we know about a lot of the neglect that took place there, mm-hmm. and that continues to take place. Mm-hmm. In fact, in 2021, they indicted Officer Godfrey Peters, mm-hmm. for manslaughter, okay. because of inmate that was in his care, mm-hmm. died of asphyxiation. So this has been an ongoing.
You said officer, and he was a correction officer?
He was a correctional officer.
Okay.
And I think Leonard's going to talk about the fact that they left their post.
Okay.
And this guy was in crises.
Okay. And that happened like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
But you said there's things even going back to the 70s.
Right.
That it was happening.
Right.
Okay. We're going to get back to you, Joe, but I want Leonard to get in because I want to make sure they ask this question, because you both have served time in the ACI back in the day, and we won't get into when exactly unless you bring it up. But I want to ask the question, have either of you been subjected to medical neglect or abusive medical treatment in the ACI? We're going to start with you.
Okay, yes, I have definitely been subjected to abusive treatment, denial of treatment. But before we get to that, right, I'd like to talk about in the past. Mm-hmm. It's not a new phenomenon. I mean, there was a prisoner, his name was Eugene Souza. Mm-hmm. He was sentenced on November the 4th of 1983 to serve a 10-year sentence. He died on January the 18th of 1989 after being denied appropriate medical treatment for appendicitis. Mm. They allowed him to suffer for 6 weeks or so with appendicitis, mm-hmm. obviously very ill, mm-hmm. until on the day, November the 4th, January 18th of 1989, he died because his appendix literally burst. Okay. So they took him to the hospital just in time for his appendix to burst, and he died.
So he was behind the walls.
He was behind the walls seeking medical treatment, and they were giving him Tylenol and muscle relaxers. But he looked like he was pregnant. Sure. Obviously, he was very ill, extremely ill. I mean, you didn't need to be a doctor to understand that this man was ill and in need of attention.
Sure. Now, I mentioned behind the walls like that because I know you're part of the Behind the Walls committee of mm-hmm. Direct Action for Rights and Equality, and I should have mentioned that at the top. That's the committee. I mean, DARE has different committees. We had the committee that deals with housing last week with the rent stabilization. THA, tenant. What's the full name of that committee?
I guess it's the Tenant Housing Association.
That's right, THA, Tenant Housing Association. But this is Behind the Walls, mm-hmm. which has been around for a while. This committee. Okay, I'm going to stick with you, Leonard, just for a hot minute here, because in 1977, the federal court opinion case, Parmigiano versus Garrahy. Talk about that a little bit with Judge Patine.
Well, that was a case that dealt with the whole entire prison system, right? It was determined then that the maximum security building was unfit for human habitation because of conditions inside the building. Mold everywhere, the heating system is inadequate. That building was actually, the first parts of that building was actually constructed or built by Buffalo soldiers, right? They came up from Texas at the end of the Civil War, and that prison is what? It's over 100 years old, getting close to 200, 150 years old. It's too old, right? It's antiquated. It's cold in there, right? In addition to the determination that it was unfit for human habitation, the medical department was deemed to be providing cruel and unusual punishment because of the lack of medical facilities and their ability to provide for the prisoner's medical needs.
So this was a federal court order in 1977.
Yeah, we're talking about 50 years later now.
Dealing with the
ACI.
ACI. And I should mention that in Rhode Island, you know, the minimum and maximum, and it's one prison in Cranston. There's not, it's not like Massachusetts with different prisons in different cities.
Well, they're different buildings now.
Different buildings.
We have a minimum security building, maximum security building, and a medium security building. They're separate facilities.
But you're saying that all those facilities in 77 were all deemed to have mold and have problems?
Pretty much so.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, because the cruel and unusual punishment, which in turn constitute a violation of the 8th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. What, if anything, for better or for worse, has changed in the delivery of medical services? Well, that's 1977. That's, what did you say, 55 years ago, 45 years ago? Something
40,
like that.
47, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that. All right, I'm going to go back to Joe. We'll get back to you, Leonard, but I want to ask Joe, do correctional officers have a role in directly providing access to medical care to prisoners?
We met with the prison. Crowley and some of the staff and the nurse, they told us that there were officers that had medical training.
Okay.
And they were able to address the basic medical needs. However, that's not true. And if it was true, the officer's not on his post, how can he provide any medical training?
Okay. Now, Crowley, who's Crowley?
Crowley is, he's an associate of Wayne Salisbury. He has, he's like,
Public relations.
Public relations. Ventura is the spokesman.
Humphrey Ventura.
Right.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, so, but the thing is that supposedly they have his training, but Pete Page fell out on a basketball court, and they didn't address his concerns. Then he went into cardiac arrest, and they called a nurse who took her sweet time getting there.
Okay.
And then when she got there, she kind of kicked him to see if he was.
Sure.
Then she had to go back and get medical equipment, and by that time he was.
Now I was gonna get right into the Page case as well as the Washington case. No, it's okay. But I just had one more question to ask before I got into that, and that question was: what recourse does a prisoner have if and when he or she seeks but is denied treatment for a serious medical problem?
Supposedly, there's a grievance process.
Okay.
And it goes through these different channels. But I'm persuaded to think that most of these grievances go into what we call File 13. Do you know what that is?
Round file.
Circular file,
yeah.
we call it.
Yeah.
Circular, you call File 13 circular file.
Yeah, thrown in the garbage.
All right, well, okay.
But for a medical issue, you have to write to the medical director.
Okay.
Right. And if the medical director doesn't give you the relief that you are seeking, right, then you basically have to go to federal court, which I had to do several times to get appropriate treatment.
Okay.
In other words, you have to file a lawsuit.
All right, so you had to do this yourself?
Yeah,
okay.
Twice.
All right, so let's get right into it now because there's two cases, the Page family and the Washington family.
Right.
Let's start with the Pages.
Okay.
Okay, what exactly happened with the individual?
Well, with Pete Page, he was playing basketball. But before I hit that, let me say Carol Pona also needed medical attention, and that's why we're arguing about bail on 32.
I heard about Carol Pona. That was a couple of years ago.
No, it was last year.
That was last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she subsequently passed away.
Yeah.
She didn't get the medical treatment that she desperately needed. In regard to Pete Page, he went into cardiac arrest on the basketball court. He fell. And supposedly, these officers have this specific training. Well, nobody exhibited that type of training. And furthermore, when they did call the nurse, I don't know if she was in the maximum building, medium building, I don't know where she was, but by the time she got there, and the thing that disturbed me most is when she took her foot to see if he was feeling anything.
So you said that she kicked him?
Yeah, it went like this.
Okay, all right.
See, here's the thing. We have access to the prison through different mediums. So we know that. And then by the time she went and got what she needed to address his specific issue, he was gone.
Okay. And
Willie,
now that was exactly when, because I got the opponent wrong. The opponent was last year.
right.
The page.
That was this year.
That was this year, recently.
Recently.
Right. Okay.
Regarding Willie Washington, the information came to us that they were banging on the walls. And when they bang on those walls, you can hear right throughout that whole place.
Sound like dumpsters, like a trash truck dropping a dumpster. Boom, boom, you know, rumbling.
It's really loud.
Right.
Really loud.
No response. And we know why there was no response, because they weren't on their post.
Okay.
And he took off.
Okay.
Right? And that's something he can probably tell you more about because of his situation where they took off.
Now, Willie Washington, what had specifically happened? He was in medical duress.
He had been ill for a couple of days.
Okay.
Right, and he went to seek medical attention, and they kind of like, yeah, you're all right, take this aspirin and go back to your cell.
Okay.
He did that once, and he did that twice.
Okay.
And he sought to seek attention the third time, and they were slow in responding, and he died.
Okay, all right. And that's recent, too.
He was unresponsive by the time.
That was February the 28th that he died.
Right, I was going to say that's a couple months ago.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, those are tragedies for sure. All three cases, and I know the opponents. That's a lot. All the families are large families here.
Right. And there's a young lady that they wouldn't give us the information on her, who died the day or the next day after she got to the prison. Right.
Yeah, at intake. Yeah.
At intake.
Yeah. All right. We're going to get back to talk about these specific cases, but I want to go to my buddy here, Leonard, and go back to Judge Pateen's 77 findings. His comments related to the presence of toxic mold in the Department of Correction facilities, and I mean, is there a double standard in play here? What is the medical staff's response to prisoner complaints about allergic reactions to exposure to toxic mold? I mean, is still mold there?
Yes, there's mold there.
Black mold.
Let's see.
Okay.
I complained about mold, right?
Yeah.
I had never been allergic to anything in my life, right? But suddenly my lungs started burning. My throat was literally closing up. I was filled with mucus.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm in medical complaining about this. And the doctor says to me, oh, you're allergic. I'm allergic to what? Let's do some tests to find out what I'm allergic to. And to quote him, he said, oh, it's probably mold in this old building.
He said that.
The doctor. This is what the doctor told me. He said, it's probably mold in this old building. So my response was, okay, let's do some tests to find out what it is. And he tells me that he is not a fan of skin allergy testing. Right, so here we go, federal court.
Right.
Right, I went to federal court, and the case was settled where they agreed to provide the treatment, but it took me like 5 years from the time that I filed that lawsuit till I actually got the skin allergy test. Now, there's like a double standard at play here, definitely. Right, and I wrote this out, because I'm kind of old and my memory's jacked up. Right?
Yeah, you're young.
And let's see here. So it was shocking to see that the difference between how the presence of mold in the ACI was and is being dismissed as being acceptable, as compared to how the presence of mold in the Dr. E.A. Rickey Middle School